instruction from great trade literature, giving quality text to our students, getting those quality texts in their hands every day so that they can fall in love with authors and illustrators and then run down to the library and find other titles by those same folks. This is how we build that love for reading. Instruction in Into Reading is flexible, and we start off every day with whole class instruction before transitioning into that opportunity to have those individual needs met through small group instruction, following with that whole class wrap up. Now, every grade level will consist of modules of instruction where we start by building background knowledge. You'll see our essential question, oftentimes having great ties to science and social studies standards. And then we start building background through the use of videos, as well as anchor charts, knowledge maps, ways for our students to start making those connections and getting that big picture framework. My week at a glance, I'm going to see my organization for the entire week's worth of lessons. Notice the color coding and daily foundational skills practice in purple will let me know that we are going to lay that strong foundation. Vocabulary will follow in blue, daily reading mini lessons and suggestions for small group instruction, following up with that writer's workshop. Let's start by taking a look at some of those foundational skills pieces. HMH knows the critical role that foundational skills instruction plays in every young reader's life, and we want you to have the tools that you need to help your students be successful. We start by utilizing the gradual release of responsibility model in all of our explicit instructional pieces, and we take that the next step by creating downloadable PowerPoints that you can customize to bring those practices to life. Or maybe you need some articulation videos to model what these sounds look like. Or some more independent practice through the use of games.
Pick a word to complete the sentence. Who wants to bake this to eat?
Or probably my favorite resource, our brand new Alpha Friends cards, complete with great music videos that really help to bring these to life and get our students up and moving.
Tyra Tiger's got a brand new dance with the letter T. Everybody get on your toes. 1, 2, 3.
Vocabulary instruction is another critical daily practice. You'll see that we introduce these skills, again, using that I do it, we do it, you do it, gradual release of responsibility model, and provide you the resources to bring these lessons to life, whether that's through our display and engage slides, through our vocabulary practice, or our online interactive vocabulary practice, where students get to work independently with some of their critical vocabulary words, utilizing flashcard activities, and getting some opportunity to do some work and get some instant feedback, whether it's through matching or actually having students, take a look at some of those Greek and Latin roots, some prefixes and suffixes, getting some great visual support through visual examples, and having them actually put some of these words together, all the while getting that instant feedback that students crave and they need to help inform their practice as they move. Now let's take a look at whole group reading instruction. For our littlest learners, that reading instruction will start in Read Aloud in Big Books, with all of your texts in kindergarten coming in this format. First and second grade, you'll have a series of Read Aloud books as well. And all of those texts will come with what we call our book stick, an actual sticker that you can place on that back cover of your Read Aloud book and have all of those great questions right there in your back pocket when you need them the most, including some suggestions about what each book will provide our students and what they'll love about it. Now, for our older students, starting at first grade, we'll take all of those great texts that we'll be reading as part of our multi-genre units, and we'll place them into one student consumable book called the Student My Book. And if you liked that idea about having a post-it on the back of your book, you're going to love what you see in your companion piece called the Teaching Pal, where we take that student book and layer in all of your supportive instruction right there in the margin. So it looks like we're all reading from the same book, but I've got some support embedded right into mine, including some, early strategies around comprehension, even social emotional learning strategies built in, purple Post-its that will help me target those closer places that I want to dig in a little bit more deeply, yellow Post-it notes that will help me understand how I can set up this classroom instruction, and probably one of our favorites, the red Post-its around notice and note. This notice and note close reading strategy helps our students dig in a little bit deeper by using some of those things that you and I look for in every text and explicitly teaching our students to look for them. Based on the research of Drs. Kylene Beers and Robert Probst, they started looking for commonalities of ways you and I pick up on things in the text and started teaching those things specifically to our students to look for them. Now, if Notice and Note is new to you, don't worry, you'll have everything you need in your teacher's guide to support your students and yourself in learning these easy signposts that stay consistent from grade level to grade level. Let's take a look at what this instructional pathway looks like from that teacher's guide. I'm now in a third grade teacher's guide, and you'll see that step 1 is going to start off with having me utilize an anchor chart. And this anchor chart is embedded right here in my teacher's guide so that I can open it up to display to students, print it, and have a copy for each one, or just use it as the one that I'm going to, create in the moment with my students. From there, I'll be going into step 2, where it'll tell me exactly what Post-its I want to be using when I'm reading through that text with my students, and that I'll probably want to use Notice and Note here as well. And from my materials list here on the left-hand side, I can open up my book and see that it is a digital page-per-page representation of what my students would be seeing in print. Online, they have full text audio embedded. Students and teachers can come in and highlight and leave notes, and any work that my students do in that interactive student guide, I can utilize my T-Review button to see right there in the moment. Other things to notice about this online teacher's guide is that it is, again, a page-per-page representation of what you would have in print, and just one way that we can show you the support that we layer in for all learners, but specifically around that English language learner support as well. We know that it's critical to meet all student needs, but we do want you to know that our ELL support is consistent throughout all of our instructional pieces. Whether it's giving you that text x-ray to know what you're reading before you head into the text, specific suggestions for students to do during reading, and even home letters in English and in Spanish so that I can provide that school-to-home connection. Literally every page you see in your teacher's guide will have some form of instructional support for our English language learners. Now, before we take a look at small group instruction, it's important for me to know what those strengths and weaknesses are that my students are currently grappling with. And one of those questions we get commonly asked is, how do I know where they're starting as readers? And so we'd love to introduce to you Amira. After students read to Amira online, she can give us an idea around their oral reading fluency and let us know if the student might be, needing some potential additional screening around dyslexia. She can also provide some tutoring. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a bit. But Amira is just one of our tools around assessment. You're going to see daily assessments around the stories that students read, as well as weekly and module cold read Mississippi State standards-based assessment, so you can really see if they can apply those skills that you've been teaching each week, as well as adaptive assessments like our reading growth measure, which can give you that lexile range for each student and a good understanding of how each one of them are performing on language scores as well as reading comprehension. Online on my Ed dashboard, I am going to have all of the assessment data that I need right at my fingertips. When I click onto my class and over into data and reports, I'll see that up-to-date information, whether it's from my whole class perspective or even looking at one specific assessment. Ed will be able to tell me how my students did on each of those assessments, giving me that item analysis, letting me know those 4 most frequently missed questions, as well as the standards that are being assessed in this particular quiz and how my students are performing as far as proficiency is concerned. I'll be able to see individual student performance, how many points they received in addition to their percentage score, how much time it took them to take those particular assessments, but probably our favorite is the recommend groups button. Ed will put my students into groups based on how they did on that assessment, but know that I have the overall ability to move students into whatever groups that I need to get them just the right resource. Now that we've identified some student needs, let's take a look at some of the resources that Into Reading can offer for small group instruction. Now, there are a lot of ways that you can look at small group, and there are a lot of tools that we have to support you, starting with our Rigby Level Reader Library. Rigby truly is the gold star to leveled reading, and you'll see that each classroom gets 90 unique titles. Physically in your classroom, 6 copies each, digital access for all students where you can actually reach up or down into different grade levels to meet specific needs. Regardless of the form of your Rigby takes place, you'll find a take and teach lesson plan that will give you multiple ways to use any text in any given week. For those students who need reinforcement in foundational skills, our Start Right readers are not your average decodable texts. Students are going to find characters and storylines that they'll follow each week to really give them that authentic reading experience around foundational skills. For more of a skills instruction perspective, our tabletop reading mini lessons take those same anchor charts we saw in whole group instruction, but puts it in a small group perspective. So I've got my anchor chart on the front and a text agnostic lesson plan on the back, so I can use it with any story that we're reading. Tabletop mini lessons for English language development are specific to the skills and strategies we're working on every day in that core reading class. So a great extension for that group of students with those great strategies right there on the back. Now, some of your students may need some more intensive support, and so I want you to know that for our Tier 2 needs, you'll have what we call our Read and Respond journal. At each grade level, starting at first grade, you'll see parallel texts that are written at about a year to a year and a half below grade level, specifically chunked to ask students to stop and read and respond, reflecting on those same skills and strategies we're practicing in the rest of the class during the week. For Tier 3 students, we know that it is a foundational skills need at all grade levels. And so know that online in our intervention tile, you're going to see over 250 printable mini lessons on specific foundational skills support with every step of that lesson plan planned for you, giving you some things that you'll want to think about as you head into seeking these more specific skills, and including some printable resources so that students can put these skills into practice. All of that can be found on your dashboard. For some additional practice that's more personalized, take a look at some of our suggestions around adaptive student software. We met Amira when we were talking about assessment, but students who read an Amira practice get some of those micro interventions that they would get if they were reading shoulder to shoulder with a tutor. And for Waggle, our students starting in kindergarten will have interactive practice that can adjust based on their student need. It is an extension of the skills that we're practicing in our whole group and small group mini lessons. Finally, let's talk about writing workshop. Writing in Into Reading takes 2 forms. First, you'll see that writing in response to reading that students are going to encounter right there in their My Book. Not only through the essential question performance task style writing, but even through the daily writing that students will do in response to the reading that they're doing. Then you'll find a writing workshop teacher's guide where you're going to find 12 modules of instruction for writing, each one of which has a focal text that comes as part of your adoption, both physically in your classroom, but also digitally for each of you and your students. Those writing workshop modules will walk students all the way through that writing process. So we're going to take a look at what this looks like online in Ed. In the writing workshop folder, I will see all of my resources organized by module so that I can open up those resources and again see a page-for-page digital representation of what I have in print. The online advantage is that all of those resources that are listed are clickable so that I can click on my anchor chart and provide my students a great resource around revising, or take a look at some of those display and engage resources that I can use to introduce some of these concepts to my students. All of them are embedded right there in my lesson plan, again, including that English language learner support. Another type of support that you'll see embedded right there into that writing workshop lesson plan will be targeted grammar support, just that right mini lesson to meet the needs of your student writers. That is part of our daily grammar practice as well, where you'll see that same level of support we see in writing there to support those grammar skills. And for those students starting at third grade that are ready to practice that online reading and writing situation, you'll see those are built in to support those end of module writing tasks.